Buenas tardes para todos y para todas. Good evening to everybody. Y muchas gracias por acompañarnos en esta tercera actividad virtual del cuarto Festival de Navegación Tradicional del Caribe Insular, una iniciativa liderada por la organización Sea, Land and Culture All Providence Initiative desde el archipiélago de San Andrés, Providencia y Santa Catalina, y que cuenta con el apoyo de diferentes instituciones que nos han permitido hacer este festival. Antes de iniciar, entonces, me gustaría darle el crédito a las personas que nos apoyan: el Programa Nacional de Concertación Cultural del Ministerio de Cultura, la Universidad Nacional de Colombia, sede Caribe, The Lighthouse Foundation desde Alemania, el Fondo Acción, Sensata Agua Viva, el Centro de Excelencia en Ciencias del Mar, CEMARIN, la Comisión Colombiana del Océano, el Centro Cultural del Banco de la República en la isla de San Andrés, la Radio Nacional de Colombia, la Casa Editorial Welcome, la iniciativa Grand Sea Flower y Slow Food International, y el Cayman Skateboard Club. En la tarde de hoy nos encontramos aquí para traerles una presentación de una iniciativa relacionada con el transporte marítimo en el contexto de la crisis climática que atraviesa el planeta y la humanidad. Es una iniciativa que viene otra vez desde el otro lado del mundo, desde las Marshall Islands, un archipiélago localizado en Oceanía. En el día de hoy tenemos a varias personas que nos acompañan desde diferentes lugares del mundo, que nos van a estar contando sobre esta iniciativa que tiene lugar allí. Así que, para no demorarme más, le voy a dar la bienvenida a nuestros invitados, y la primera persona que nos va a acompañar es Suelin, quien nos va a dar una introducción sobre este tema. Thank you very much for being here today, Suelin, Henrik, Rafael, and all the team that is accompanying us today. It is really a pleasure for us to have you here sharing with us at this festival that we've been doing for 4 years now in our small islands located in the Western Caribbean. That precisely is a space where we are looking forward to discuss and contribute to the safeguarding of maritime traditions, including navigation, fishing. So now I'm going to give you the word. So Suelin, you can start. So we can start sharing your presentation. La presentación, por favor.
Sharing my first presentation. Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, Yagoy Alec, greetings everyone. Before I start my presentation, I would like to take this opportunity to introduce myself. My name is Twilin Johannes Langrin, and my colleagues, friends call me Sue for short. I would also like to thank to Ms. Anna Isabel for reaching out to our team and giving us this opportunity to showcase our project to anyone and everyone who is interested to learn about it. I am currently enjoying my vacation in Hawaii, but because this is a rare opportunity, I wanted to take part in it. I have been working with GIZ under the low carbon sea transport in RMI's project since 2019 for almost 3 years now. So far, I have enjoyed my journey with my colleagues, whom we assist and encourage each other to tackle whatever obstacles come our way. And I look forward to the journey of it with, fingers crossed, astonishing success. Today, along with my team, we have Director Elson Kellen and Associate Director Tony Alec from Canoes of the Marshall Islands, also known as WAM locally, and Mr. Henrik Richard Alden, who is also joining from Hawaii, will share who will share more on island lagoon component history and its progress. With that said, please allow me to take this moment and give to my colleagues to introduce themselves before I proceed with my presentations. Rafael, team, please.
Good morning and hello from the Marshall Islands. My name is Rafael Held. I'm working in the project since 5 years as technical advisor. And I also want to express the gratitude from our end, from the Low Carbon Sea Transport Project, for the invitation and reaching out to us and having us today in this event. I give it over to my colleague Berlin.
Yagway Olive, my name is Berlin Filippo. I work as a project officer for the Low Carbon Sea Transport Project. Give it to my colleague Yanina.
Buenos dias, everyone. I'm Yanina. I work for the Low Carbon Sea Transport Project here in the Marshall Islands as project advisor and help with everything that comes up.
Hi, my name is Elisa. I'm originally from Fiji, and I'm working here in the Marshall Islands in the Low Carbon Sea Transport. And I work for the finance team. Thank you.
Kellen, and I am the director for the Canoes of the Marshall Island program, the One Island Module 1.
Hello, my name is Tony, and I'm with Alson at Canoes of the Marshall Islands.
Thank you. Bueno, puedo hacer básicamente una breve traducción. Se presentó primero Suelin Johannes, que es la persona que originalmente contactamos para que nos acompañara en esta ocasión. Y después se ha presentado el equipo de personas que están conectados desde diferentes lugares y particularmente, bueno, Henrik Richter, que está por una parte, y después el equipo de esta iniciativa que está conectado desde las Islas Marshall. You can go ahead, Sue.
Thank you, Anna. Carlos, is my presentation up? Just want to check before
Ya puedes empezar con la presentación, Carlos.
Gracias. Okay. I guess the first question everyone is asking right now is, what is the project name? And the name of our project is called Low Carbon Sea Transport in the Republic of the Marshall Islands. And where is it exactly? It's how big is it? What is so unique about it? Carlos, sorry, next.
Siguiente, Carlos.
Okay. In the map shown on the slide, it is in the Pacific Ocean and part of the Micronesian island nation, and we seldomly experience hurricanes and tornadoes, but we do encounter the aftermaths like strong winds and rough high tides. A better look at the geography of the Marshall Islands is in the next slide. Carlos, next.
Carlos, por favor, la siguiente donde están los mapas, el mapa de las Islas Marshall.
Okay, thank you. A better look at it. It consists of 29 local coral atolls and 5 islands. Our capital city is called Majuro Atoll. And let me see. Next, please.
Siguiente.
Oh, sorry. I think I may have. Sorry. Can you please go back to the map of the Marshall Islands? Sorry. Thank you. And on the bullets, there are fun facts about the Marshall Islands in case anyone wants to learn more about it. One of the things that is very rare about the Marshall Islands is that it consists of 2 chains. One is relic and one is rata. And about approximately 98% of the Marshall Island territory consists of ocean water. And for as long as I can remember, the main source of transportation in the Marshall Islands is either through airplanes or ships. It is mainly through the ship sector that provides the means of transportation of goods and passengers from one atoll to the other, since it's cheaper. To simply put, the implementation of the low carbon sea transport started in 2017, and we are honored and privileged to have strong leaders who have, after long hours of discussions and negotiating with countries like Germany, we are here. The project is the byproduct of what we are sharing here today. Ana, you can translate if you want to.
Ok, perfecto. Bueno, básicamente Sueli nos ha empezado a presentar un poco sobre este proyecto que se llama la Iniciativa de Transporte Marítimo Bajo en Carbono en la República de las Marshall Islands. Nos ha mostrado en el mapa dónde se localizan las Marshall Islands en el mundo y posteriormente un mapa más cercano del archipiélago de las Marshall Islands, que está conformado por 29 atolones de coral y 5 islas. Es básicamente una república donde el 98% del territorio es océano, y en donde, por supuesto, la navegación ha sido supremamente importante como medio de transporte. You can go ahead, Suel.
Sorry, I thought I had the mute on, but okay. Thank you. For this slide, it shows our 3 main components of the project, which are the inside lagoon transportation, the inter-atoll transportation, and lastly is the high-level policy transport support. Next.
La diapositiva 6. You can continue.
Thank you. Okay, this one, I will only show you a few photos of what has been happening within the first component, which is the inside lagoon. Because
Espérate, excuse
our
me,
two guests
Suelin.
who are with us today, they will be showing more, telling more about that, since it'll be coming up within their presentations. And this is actually slides are a couple of pictures shown here that are about the first component, which is the inside lagoon transport. I just wanted to show you what has been going on throughout the year since 2017. And as you look along the slides, there have been major developments within that component. Furthermore, if you sorry, Alison and Henrik will tell you more about inside lagoon. As for the second component, which is the inter-atoll sea transportation.
La 8, Carlos.
Before I
Continue.
proceed, I will give this moment for you, Ana, to translate.
Okay, so basically, bueno, nos empieza a contar entonces Suelin sobre lo que ha sido el proyecto que inicia en el 2017 por iniciativa precisamente de líderes locales que están interesados como en empezar esta cuestión del transporte a vela, ¿cierto? En el marco de las cuestiones relacionadas con las emisiones de carbono y en relación con las formas tradicionales de navegación de las poblaciones de los Marshall Islands. Y básicamente ellos se ponen en contacto con gente de Alemania y así empieza, digamos, este proyecto que tiene varias etapas, incluyendo que empiezan, digamos, por el transporte dentro de las lagunas arrecifales, ¿cierto? Que siguen y que tienen otros componentes relacionados con ya más con el transporte entre los atolones y un componente relacionado con la generación de políticas. Entonces ella nos está empezando a contar un poco sobre la primera parte, ¿cierto? Sobre lo que tiene que ver con el transporte al interior de la laguna. Y pues aquí nos ha mostrado algunas fotos de las embarcaciones que se han empezado a diseñar y a trabajar en el marco del proyecto. Okay, you can go ahead and then you're going on this slide 9, am I right?
Slide 10.
La 10, Carlos.
Can I go ahead or?
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, so thank you. In the second component, in the partnership with the International Climate Initiative, one of the goal achievements is currently underway that involves the local windy conditions, but on a larger scale, like bigger ships. It has begun the construction of a Pacific Island vessel supply vessel with an innovative sail propulsion system for climate neutral shipping services. Due to the local windy conditions, the ship is expected to sail around RMI, Republic of the Marshall Islands, with a powerful sailing system that is easily to operate and capable of automation. The power supply for the auxiliary operation is provided by renewable energy sources via photovoltaics, small wind turbines, and a shaft generator. A conversion of coconut-based biodiesel can be made possible, and in conditions to the transportation, the ship will be used as a vocational training center. This is something that the second component is going through at the moment. And you can go ahead and translate, Ana.
Ok, entonces lo que estamos viendo en la diapositiva número 11, 10 y 11, es precisamente la segunda parte, el segundo componente de este proyecto, en donde ya estamos hablando de el transporte entre los atolones, o sea que son distancias más largas, y lo que han estado trabajando es precisamente la construcción de barcos más grandes, ¿cierto? Que son propulsados a velas, obviamente con tecnología de punta que hace que puedan ser, pues bueno, que sean eficientes en términos energéticos y que pues al mismo tiempo también sean fáciles, digamos, de maniobrar. Aprovechando las condiciones de bastante viento que hay en las Marshall Islands, pues eso también hace fácil la operación de estas embarcaciones. Y esta embarcación que se puede observar en la pantalla, la idea es que, bueno, es un piloto que busca precisamente pues ser además un centro de entrenamiento para lo que, digamos, se espera seguir haciendo, teniendo en cuenta además, bueno, que las embarcaciones son también embarcaciones que funcionan con energía eólica, ¿cierto? Con el viento, pero también algunos de sus componentes funcionan con energía solar. You can go ahead, Suelin. Tell me the slide, please.
The milestone sets the precedents for zero-emission sea transport in the Pacific Island region. This is one of the goals of the second component of this project. And after the yet mentioned baseline, And so the canoe shown on slide 11 and 12 are some of the things that one of our partners in Germany, which is the University of Applied Science in Emden-Leer. This university is a set of teams that are technical Marines who are helping us with one of our objective, which is an option catalog. This document includes all feasible and doable options in regards to the desirable emission reductions for ships in the regions. So if anyone wants to have a look at what has been going on and how did the design come with and so forth, there is a link. There is a link that we can provide later if anyone wants to have a look at it. But mainly after some time with our project discussing with the RMI government, they have endorsed the options. They have endorsed the building of a new ship, which is shown on the slides.
Siguiente, Carlos, por favor.
The measures will be assessed by yet trained crew and international shipyard experts. All components carried out throughout the next 3 years can support a final solution. that can lead to a reasonable upscaling in the region. So, yes, you can translate if you.
Ok, bueno, básicamente nos está contando sobre esta iniciativa que es como la primera piedra que se está poniendo en la región del Pacífico Sur del mundo para pensar la cuestión de la necesidad de reducir las emisiones de carbono, ¿cierto?, frente a la crisis climática y pues aspirando a tener, digamos, un cero emisiones. Entonces, en estos momentos también se está buscando hacer otra embarcación que de alguna manera pues cumpla con todas estas características. You can go ahead, Sue.
Thank you. On slide 13 and 14, it shows
13, Carlos. Go ahead.
Thank you. On slide 13 and 14, it shows one of the things that under an inter-atoll component has been going as well, like the construction of the Maritime Training Center on Mejero. So basically, what we are aimed to do with this is to have to provide a training center in the Marshall Islands, because normally when we want seamanship, they send out to other islands or neighboring countries, but we're trying to reduce that just so it's within the Marshall Islands. And so far the building is almost complete. Hopefully by end of this year we want to move in, but who knows, we might move in next month or the following month, but for sure before the end of this year.
Siguiente, Carlos. Entonces, básicamente lo que nos estaba contando es que como parte de esta segunda parte del proyecto, también está entonces la cuestión de este centro de entrenamiento en cuestiones marítimas, en donde lo que se busca es precisamente que la gente local pueda capacitarse en temas relacionados con ingeniería, con navegación, porque es muy frecuente que para esto la gente tenga que salir hacia otras islas fuera de las Marshall Islands, y esperan que hacia el final de este año este centro esté construido, que es el que se ve en estos momentos en la fotografía. ¿Ok? Go ahead.
Thank you. The last component is the policy component, and one of the objectives of this project is to support the Marshall Islands to fulfill its national determined contribution objectives and goals under the Paris Agreement in the transport sector. RMI itself is ambitious goal to reduce emissions from domestic shipping by 40% in 2030, below the emission levels measured in the year 2010, and to achieve full decarbonization of the sector in 2050. Thereby, RMI is the only country worldwide to explicitly include domestic shipping in its ND's national determined contribution, and sets a great example to take shipping emissions seriously on the path towards a climate-friendly and energy-efficient future. In the Marshall Islands, maritime support is essential for economic activity, connectivity, and resilience, but it is also a significant factor for delivering education, health, environmental, and economical development, including response to climate change impacts. Connectivity between the atolls and islands of RMI by sea is essential to provide basic access to services and socio-economic opportunities for communities on outer islands and atolls. Although the cost to provide transport services to these destinations is high. Through our project, we support the government of the Marshall Islands in their participation at high-level policy events to highlight their ambitious climate goals and inspire other countries to follow the same lead. We organize capacity development workshops for policy and decision makers, provide direct policy support for meetings and conferences, and assist our partners in drafting ambitious policy strategies to fulfill the national determined contribution commitments. As you can see on the next slide, which is 15,
La
we
15.
support the delegation at the International Maritime Organization for preparations on essential meetings in the maritime sector. Thank you. Anna, you can translate.
Ok. Bueno, básicamente nos cuenta Suelin que en la tercera parte de esta iniciativa tiene que ver entonces con el apoyo para generar, digamos, una incidencia al nivel de las políticas relacionadas con un transporte marítimo bajo en carbono. Digamos que hay unos compromisos que se han asumido desde el gobierno de las Marshall Islands para reducir emisiones en el transporte doméstico en un 40% en los próximos años y tener una completa descarbonización para el 2050. Es, digamos, digamos, es un país pionero, digamos, en hacer este trabajo en relación con el transporte marítimo doméstico, teniendo en cuenta que pues es clave para el funcionamiento de estas islas, ¿cierto? En diferentes sentidos, ¿cierto? Tanto económicamente, pero también en materia de educación y, por supuesto, digamos, por lo que significa para la subsistencia de las personas. En ese sentido, desde el proyecto, pues se busca apoyar también al gobierno de las Marshall Islands para que haga incidencia, digamos, no solamente hacia adentro, sino al nivel internacional con estas cuestiones relacionadas con la reducción de las emisiones de carbono y también inspirar a otros países para que puedan, digamos, para que se interesen por esta cuestión. ¿Ok? Suelen. El microphone. Microphone.
Sorry, thank you. So under the policy component, we are also working on something called Maritime Transport Roadmap. And with this roadmap, we hope to achieve not only sea transport, also land transport in order to reduce the emissions. Yeah, so that's also one of the small project with a small project within the component of the policy component. And that's it for my presentation of the project. Anything else in terms of the Inside Lagoon? My two friends, Director Elson and Henrik, will present more on that. Thank you. Como Tata, for your interest.
Okay, thank you, Suelin. En esta última parte, básicamente nos cuenta sobre otra de las iniciativas al interior de esta iniciativa más grande que tiene que ver con una red de trabajo en torno al tema del transporte marítimo bajo en carbono, que además va más allá y también se vincula con temas relacionados con la reducción de emisiones en el transporte terrestre. Y ya con esto termina la presentación de Suelin y van ahora a intervenir a sus compañeros que están en las Marshall Islands. We don't have a presentation for them, do we?
For who, sorry?
For like the presentation that we have is for Henrik, so that one is not going. They are just like going to speak. Am I right?
Yeah, Elson will speak on behalf of WAM, but Henrik provided he's ready with the presentation that I shared.
Yeah, exactly. But we are not going to show that presentation now. We're going to listen to Rafael and them. All right.
No, it's okay. We can proceed to the next one, which I believe is Elson, who will talk about the history of WAM and how it came to.
Okay. Entonces vamos a tener ahora la siguiente intervención.
So Elson, whenever you're ready, I believe the floor is yours to.
Chat. Okay. Okay, good morning, everybody. Well, it's good morning from the Marshall Islands. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, good. Usually we say Yahweh. Yahweh means, so I'm going to syllableize Yahweh first. Yahweh, I-A, is Yah, that's mean rainbow, and Kwe mean you. So we have no word for I, bye, good night, and all that. We just say Yahweh. We mean you're beautiful like a rainbow.
Okay.
Anyhow, I don't have slides today this morning, but I'm just going to briefly talk about the Canoes of the Marshall Islands, the One Island program. And I'd like to first thanks for this opportunity to tell a little story about the program. And of course, acknowledge everybody that are gathered here this morning or this afternoon. And a special thank you to Suelen, who has done a great job on giving that presentation. I think the presentation tells the whole story about the Marshall Islands ocean. We are the ocean people. So our tradition is ocean tradition is very important. Marshall Island is 1 million square mile, which is 1.852 million square kilometers. That's how big Marshall Island is. But the landmass is only 0.1%.
Yeah, I don't know why it's like stopping and starting again.
Okay, good. As long as I'm not stuttering. Where is this connected to? Profile you? Okay. That should fix the problem.
Okay, perfect.
Testing.
Yeah, we're hearing. Yeah, it sounds good.
Good. Now what let me start all over again. What is that? Oh, the size of the Marshall Islands. So Marshall Island is about 1 million square miles. That's how big the island is, which is 1.852 square kilometer. It's a huge place. But the landmass is only 0.1%, I believe, 0.1%. So all the landmass is scattered all over that part of the ocean in the North Pacific. So it means that we are ocean people. So our life depends on our crafts to bring us resources to survive. And we've been doing that for the last over 2,000 years. Do you need to translate or do I just continue?
Yeah, you can continue and then I will translate.
Okay, so like I said, so it shows that our life depends on the ocean. And so our craft have to meet the needs of the people in order to survive and sail around these oceans. So our land, first of all, it's the soil is not sufficient to grow as many trees as we want in order to build the canoes. Canoes that are strong enough to face the rough wind and oceans that we need to face as we go around and bring resources between these small islands. So our ancestor had to come up with a design that is strong and futuristic as possible. And I use the word futuristic because some of the design on these canoes are futuristic. For example, the design on the hull is asymmetric. One side is a little bit rounder than the other side. It's the same size, same design that is on the airplane wing. Without that design, the airplane won't fly. And there are so many other design on the canoe. I just give you another one. Is we call it Jojo and Cabbage, which is on the outrigger float of the canoe. This design technique actually separate the movement of the outrigger float from the hull itself. So it moves differently from each other. I believe we see that design on the car tires as they go on the road, and the tire is going up and down while the car is going smooth. That design actually, the shock absorber, that design actually make the canoe last longer and faster. So in the early days, from the 1600 to the 1940s, the Marshall Islands was colonized by the German, the Japanese during the war, and the U.S., or the Spanish and the German, Japanese, and the U.S. During the World War II, the Japanese didn't want Marshalese to build canoes, so half of the country was left without canoes because they didn't want the Marshalese to sail around the country or sail out of the country. They believed that the Marshalese were telling the American military about the Japanese secrecy in the war. So they banned canoe building, they banned sailing. So a lot of the northern Marshall Islands left without the canoe building skill and the navigational skill. So as Swellen mentioned before, that the Marshall Islands are divided into two, the sunrise chain and the sunset chain, which we say the Radak chain and the Ralik chain. So people from the sunset chain kind of gave their skills because they were pretty isolated from the rest of the country where the Japanese were. And of course, when the American came, they brought in the convenience of motorboats and all these speedboats. So a lot of people, and when they came in, of course, they had a lot of gifts. They give a lot of gifts to the chiefs, and to the leaders. So a lot of those people use those speedboats, and of course, those were in our eyes the role model. So we wanted to merge a little bit from the canoes into the more convenient way of transporting in between the islets within the lagoon or out, between the atolls. So in the early late 1980s, early 1990s, Film Museum in Chicago came to the Marshall Islands to ask if they could support them with a display at that museum. They call it the Traveling the Pacific. In that little display they needed a life-size canoe, real reef and sand and trees. So they took all of these from the Marshalls and they took a canoe. And that canoe was a 30-year-old canoe that was built by an old man from Jalud Atoll. So they asked the old man if he wanted a boat, just like the rest of the canoe builders before they gave them boats instead of canoes. The old man's name was Chinare. So that old man said no. I want to have a canoe. My canoe was old, but I want to have a canoe that I could use modern materials to rebuild it if I need to. Because all the breadthrough, of course, like as I mentioned, the islands are so small, and it takes so long to build these canoes. It's the old man says, "I will die before I have enough logs to build the next canoe." So you wanted the canoe to be built out of plywood. So a good friend of mine uh, at the time was on a ship, uh, which he built all the inside for it. He was known for wooden boat building. The National Archive, the museum, and the Historic Preservation Office got together and came up with the idea of building this canoe for this old man using modern material. So the modern material, so the only person that knew that could do that project was my good friend Dennis Alicio, who him and I actually co-founded the Canoes of the Marshall Islands. So they brought him in, and he says the only way I could build that canoe is if we document the step-by-step construction of canoes. So this knowledge and skill will live forever. And he says the other way I could do it is not just for me to document it, but I want to have trainees. I want to bring in kids from the street or from elsewhere to learn the skill. Kids with less opportunity. So they did this. They built a canoe, and then I came into the project, and we went from atoll to document the step-by-step construction of canoes, the knowledge of the stick charts and the chant and the songs. And later, a good friend of mine came in from University of Hawaii. He's also known for involving with the Polynesian Voyaging Society. He came in and says, "I'll bring a student to work with you," and that was Joe Gens. But Ben Finney was one of the three guys that actually started the Polynesian Voyaging Society, and which Hokulea and all the big boats are part of that. All the Polynesian and Melanesian, they're part of that voyaging society now in Micronesia. But anyway, Ben came in and we talked about starting a canoe program, a navigation program. So he brought in one of his students, who is currently a professor at the University of Hawaii after doing all those studies. And anyway, he came in and we work on navigational school. How to document, we came in, we document navigation and stick charts. By the way, we're working on a book now at the University of Hawaii at the moment on that front. So we started the One Island and Module program pretty much. It was in the beginning was called the One Island Canoes. It's canoes of these islands, but we changed it to be a charter non-government nonprofit organization in 1996. We started that process in 1996, and we worked with another youth program to continue this process from documentation to living archive. We didn't want to just stop right there because we thought it would have been a waste time. So what we did was we continued what we did during the documentation phase and bring in all the kids that did not finish their schooling. Elementary school dropout, high school dropout, college dropout. We brought them in to start the One Island Module, which later was called One Island Module, Canoes of the Marshall Islands program. And of course, we were still learning how to build the canoes, and the process we thought would be the best is we brought in master canoe builders from the different outer islands to work with these dropout kids. But of course, it was really hard to get funding for it because they says, well, if we give you funding over and over again, what are you going to do with thousands and thousands of canoe builders? You need to have some kind of a result at the end to face the modern lifestyle. Anyhow, in 1998, we One Island Module was established and was chartered as a non-government, non-profit organization under the government of the Republic of the Marshall Islands. So since then, we've been a charter non-government nonprofit organization. So we gradually started from bringing in master canoe builders to work on the beach to build these canoes to teach these young people. We evolved to evolve to a program where if you have, the graduate would have opportunities in life today. So we gradually bring in these young people, but then we saw that they need some kind of counseling because a lot of the kids that go through the program, they're dropouts. And the reason they were dropout is because of alcohol, family problems, and that sort of thing. So we brought in, we actually went back to school. I myself had to go back to school and be a certified counselor. So that was one of the part of the program that actually uh, inserted into the program to work with these young people. And of course, we incorporated carpentry skill and woodworking skills into the program. So it was not just canoe building, but it was modern training program. So it's traditional canoe building, traditional and contemporary vocational program. Uh, and After that, because one of the things that we did in the past was, well, we're still doing it. We went to schools and present our program at different elementary school, college, and high school. And of course, the student would come in too. And we saw that interest. A lot of the kids in those schools says, how can I be involved if I am also part of a regular academic schools? And one of the things that we did was we worked with the public school system. We call PSS or Ministry of Education. We work with them and some other sources to come up with a curriculum. And I thank GIZ for also being involved in that in supporting the idea of that curriculum. And Suelen there is actually involved in that directly. So we're almost done with that curriculum. I know I'm going everywhere, but uh, we're almost done with that curriculum. So as soon as that curriculum is finalized, which we have a couple islands to go practice that curriculum, it'll be in our national school system. Also, uh, my colleague here has been working closely with the College of the Marshall Islands to also include this curriculum as part of the College of the Marshall Islands, what they call ABE program, which is adult basic education. But the interesting thing is that the canoe program it translates into so many things. Um, we use it as science, math, and social studies, and of course, with this, program with GIZ, it's a super program that helped the outer islands too. Okay, so go back a little bit more. Um, Part of this is the canoe program has been involved in so many ways with the Marshall Island government in promoting the traditional skill and also climate change. So this is not just a canoe program, building canoes, but we're also working with the government and other agencies on so many fronts. Climate change and, of course, social lifestyle in the outer islands. I don't know about where you are, but in the Marshall Islands, the gasoline price is from $9 a gallon to $15 a gallon. So it's only appropriate to bring back a technology that our forefather used for the last 2,000 years to accommodate our transportation need within those islands in the outer islands. So I don't know if I missed, but Marshall Island is it's a total. We have a total of over 1,000 little islets out there. So it means that a lot of transportation needs is, it's out there. People need those canoes. Anyhow, so that's the, I don't want to really get into the GIZ project, but since GIZ came into the pictures, we work with GIZ engineers to work with new design that now has been proven in the outer islands, people in the outer islands. There's a couple boats out there that are being used constantly with the, for the communities out there. One design is to bring in copras and heavy nets, and the other design is for fishing. But both of them we're looking at, we're currently studying the solar energy propulsion as part of these new design that we're using today. So our traditional canoes has adopted so many other design to provide opportunities for the people in the outer islands, dropout kids that we have on Madro, and we actually even bring in people from the islands to go through this training. So I don't want to go too far. If you have any questions or anything, then I am ready to answer. Otherwise, Enric will do the yellow boats part of the presentation.
Thank you very much. Voy entonces a resumir brevemente lo que nos estaban contando. Creo que en esta parte donde podemos en realidad además hacer este link con la navegación tradicional, que es el tema que nos reúne en este festival, nos cuentan cómo en Marshall Islands el mar pues es fundamental para la vida de las personas. Como lo dice él mismo, son gente del océano, y las tradiciones y los conocimientos asociados al océano pues son supremamente importantes para los habitantes de este archipiélago, que tiene aproximadamente 500,000 kilómetros cuadrados, pero de los cuales el 98% es océano. El resto, solo una pequeña parte, son islas, ¿cierto? Son las terrestres donde habitan las personas, que de hecho han estado, hay una historia de poblamiento de más de 2.000 años, y durante esos 2.000 años pues el océano, la vida de las personas ha dependido del océano. Y por supuesto que así como la vida depende del océano, pues las embarcaciones son supremamente importantes, han sido supremamente importantes para suplir las necesidades de las personas. De ahí que en la tradición, digamos, de la región haya una gran diversidad de diseños, especialmente adaptados a las condiciones climáticas, oceanográficas de este archipiélago, que entre otras cosas, pues bueno, se caracterizan por algunas particularidades, ¿cierto? Él nos dio algunos ejemplos de diseños particulares de las canoas para diferentes usos, ¿cierto? Algunas más rápidas, algunas con una mayor capacidad de duración. Nos dio después como este recorrido histórico, ¿cierto? De cómo precisamente este conocimiento se va perdiendo en el tiempo, ¿cierto? Como consecuencia de diferentes situaciones asociadas a los procesos de colonización por parte de los europeos y de los japoneses, que hacen que este conocimiento se vaya perdiendo poco a poco. En la guerra mundial, la Segunda Guerra Mundial, nos cuenta que los japoneses no querían que se construyeran canoas, y se prohibió que las personas lo hicieran, lo cual obviamente implicó el inicio, digamos, del deterioro del conocimiento y de las prácticas asociadas a la navegación. Más tarde, los norteamericanos también llegan con motores fuera de borda, que empiezan a regalarle a los líderes, y eso lo que va a generar es también que se vaya perdiendo lo que la gente hace y lo que la gente sabe. Sin embargo, precisamente en los años 80 y 90 llega un museo de Chicago, que está desde los Estados Unidos, interesado en hacer un display sobre los navegantes del Pacífico en el museo, y tienen el interés de comprar una canoa. Allí entonces empiezan un diálogo con algunos de los sabedores, y finalmente, bueno, le ofrecen comprar la canoa y darle una embarcación moderna, ¿cierto? Y sin embargo, pues esta persona les dice, no, no me interesa, quiero tener otra canoa, y ahí empieza un proceso de construcción de unas canoas, digamos, tradicionales con materiales pues modernos o contemporáneos. Y pues básicamente lo que empieza ahí es como este proceso de resurgimiento de las tradiciones, de los conocimientos, un proceso de documentación de ese conocimiento, en donde precisamente él ha participado, ¿cierto?, desde el inicio. Digamos que la idea fue precisamente documentar el conocimiento de cómo se construyen estas canoas, pero al mismo tiempo generar procesos en donde hubieran nuevas generaciones que aprendieran de estas prácticas. De ahí que inicia un ejercicio de recorrer los atolones, ¿cierto? Todas esta gran cantidad de pequeñas islas donde todavía existe este conocimiento, documentarlo, pero al mismo tiempo crear unos programas de navegación con jóvenes, con niños, para hacer ese proceso de recuperación del conocimiento del cual van a participar pues muchísimas personas. Sin embargo, pues bueno, dice que fue muy difícil conseguir apoyo y que también, pues obviamente porque también no siempre es fácil, bueno, que se va a hacer con tantas canoas. Sin embargo, pues lograron de alguna manera recuperar gran parte de este conocimiento y lograr que mucha gente joven volviera a interesarse por este tema. De ahí que hayan creado, digamos, unos programas en donde los chicos aprenden de navegación tradicional, pero también de un conocimiento, digamos, por ejemplo, de carpintería, que puede ser útil en muchos otros contextos contemporáneos. Hoy en día, precisamente, están terminando un currículo con el Ministerio de Educación de las Marshall Islands para que ingrese en el Sistema Nacional de Educación el tema, digamos, de la navegación tradicional, pero además porque, obviamente, entonces ahí aparece también este diálogo de estos conocimientos tradicionales con todo lo que implica hoy en día el cambio climático, la crisis climática para estos pequeños estados insulares que obviamente, como también aquí en el archipiélago de San Andrés y Providencia, pues son altamente vulnerables a estas transformaciones. De ahí que entonces haya digamos, este link entre este proceso, digamos, más antiguo de recuperación de los conocimientos tradicionales de navegación con esta iniciativa que hoy en día se lidera desde las Marshall Islands, de la cual participa la cooperación alemana, en donde pues de alguna manera se están poniendo en diálogo los, digamos, diversos conocimientos. Además porque como él dice, bueno, no sé cómo serán los precios de la gasolina en donde ustedes están, pero pues aquí son tremendamente altos y por supuesto es ahí donde se hace mucho más valioso, digamos, como la recuperación de conocimientos locales y tradicionales, pues permiten en realidad mejorar la calidad de vida de las personas, teniendo en cuenta que son más de 1000 pequeñas islas y obviamente las necesidades de transporte son enormes, pero obviamente muy costosas por el tema de los precios del combustible, además pues de las implicaciones que eso tiene en términos de emisiones de carbono. De ahí que pues hoy en día con este proyecto pues también hay un proceso digamos de innovación, ¿cierto? De resignificación de la tradición para ponerla digamos al servicio en un contexto contemporáneo y de alguna manera hacer que pueda perdurar en el tiempo. So Henrik, you're going to present now, am I right? Yeah, your terms.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, transitioning to low carbon sea transport, that's already a big title for presentation. And then in addition, in Marshallese waters, the first question I usually get when I talk to people about this thing is, where is the Marshall Islands? What is that place? I've never heard about it. And Suez already gave us a hint with showing us a map. And I would like to give you another view. Next slide, please. Here we go. So this is a very, very unusual view on the globe. You can see Australia on the left, and you guys are somewhere on the right behind, this big blue ocean. And this is where the Marshall Islands is located in. And Elson has already said, the Marshall Islands it's an ocean country. It's our ocean people, the Marshallese people. And the ocean is just very important. And if you have a closer look how these islands are shaped on the next slide, then it's also pretty easy to understand why climate change is so much of a struggle there, and especially sea level rise.
Siguiente, Carlos, por favor.
Next slide, please. Yeah. So what you see on here is a satellite view on Medro and Arno. The left one is a main atoll with about like 25,000 people living there. And these islands are all atoll islands. So that means there's no high mountain, there's no, it's just no high land on these places. The highest elevation is about 2 meters, 1 meter above sea level. So it depends a little bit on the tide. And these islands only consist of these coral rings. So you actually live on a very, very thin strip of land. Sometimes it's so narrow that you can stand in the lagoon and talk to someone who is standing with his feet in the ocean water. So narrow is it. And sea level rise is just it's a huge issue when you don't have any high land, because when the water comes up, there's no way to go. And that is why the Marshall Islands have adopted a very, very ambitious, they have adopted very ambitious NDCs. We can see them on the next slide.
Siguiente.
So despite having almost no contribution to the global greenhouse gas emissions, because the Marshall Islands are very small and they don't have a big population, they have very ambitious goals, and they've set these goals pretty early in the entire discussion. Actually, the Marshall Islands were a key player in lobbying the world community to the Paris Agreement. So their late Minister Tony de Broom from the Marshall Islands was a key figure for achieving these ambitious goals in the climate agreement, and having everybody in the world signing it. And one of these goals is, for example, 40% reduction in 2030 and greenhouse gas neutrality in 2050. And 2030, let's say that's good 7 years left. That's not much. So it's a very ambitious pace we have to go to goals. Maybe I give you some time to translate.
Ok, perfect. Bueno, básicamente Henrik nos está contando un poco de este proyecto, buscando precisamente, digamos, hablándonos un poco del tema de la resiliencia climática, que se vuelve, digamos, algo supremamente necesario en un contexto de las Marshall Islands, que como nos lo muestra nuevamente en esta visión del globo terráqueo, pues son realmente un país oceánico, ¿cierto? Habitada por una gente del océano, por lo cual, de alguna manera, pues la cuestión del cambio climático se vuelve supremamente importante en la medida en que son islas completamente planas, ¿cierto? Donde las alturas sobre el nivel del mar son de 1 o de 2 metros, por lo cual, de alguna manera, realmente el aumento del nivel del mar significa pues una catástrofe para estos espacios. Ahí en estas diapositivas veíamos estos atolones, ¿cierto? En donde pues, realmente hay solo unos pedacitos muy, muy pequeños de tierra, ¿cierto? Que de alguna manera, pues con el aumento del nivel del mar quedan en una situación de alta vulnerabilidad. De ahí también entonces que en la República de las Marshall Islands haya realmente un interés muy grande por esta cuestión climática y hayan entonces ellos asumido como estas metas supremamente ambiciosas de reducción de las emisiones en el sector del transporte marítimo, que ya nos había contado Suelin antes, el 40% para el 2030 y el 2050, digamos, un transporte marítimo decarbonizado. You can go ahead, Henrik. I don't know if next slide.
Yeah, thank you very much. After showing you these pictures or these photographs of the vulnerable atolls, I would like to stress it again. Every drop of fuel we burn, every kilogram or ton of emission we blow in the air is bringing these islands closer to extinction. And what happens right there is climate genocide, because these people have no highlands. There is no place to go on these islands. So this is the starting point of this entire project. It's a fight for survival, and it's a fight for an entire people of survival in the face of climate change. And the special thing on the Marshallese NDCs is that they were the first country actually to include sea transport and shipping into them. And I think right now there are a couple of other nations who've done the same, but the Marshall Islands were the first. And that's quite important because the Marshallese shipping registry is one of the world's largest. So they have actually on shipping, they have actually a very large impact. Yeah, next slide, please.
Siguiente.
I think that was already the right one. Sorry.
Okay, mentiras. La anterior.
So this, for an island nation like the Marshall Islands, sustainable shipping is of key importance, because when you're living on an island nation and you want to get around, you need a boat, you need shipping. Everything relies on water transportation. And we, with the GIZ project, we try to address that in a two-pronged approach. So we have the entire project in a part that is about the lagoon transportation, everything that is sailing in the coastal area. And we have another part of the project that is concerned with everything that goes in between the islands. So that is offshore sailing. And my part, I'm a naval architect. I've been working with WAM now for 5 years. So my part is, together with WAM, the inside lagoon, so the coastal-based sailing, coastal-based transportation, the coastal component. Okay, next slide, please.
Siguiente.
So what you can see here is what we are talking about all the time. This is one of these, or multiple canoes. So what, I don't know what you have in your mind when you talk about canoes, but the direct translation of wa in Marshallese means canoe in English. And what we're talking about here are actually huge offshore capable sailing vessels. And also there are smaller versions for inside lagoon sailing. So we're actually talking about sailing boats, very, very efficient and sophisticated sailing boats. So this photo is in black and white because it was taken about 1880, when the Germans were in the Marshall Islands. And these were most likely the canoes that the Marshallese people have used about 2,000 years ago to settle these islands. They were, when you think back to this blue, this little blue planet with the Marshall Islands in the center, these guys, they just boldly sailed into the blue to look out for new land right in the ocean, and they found it and settled it. It's quite an achievement. And these canoes are actually still sailing today. Next slide, please.
Siguiente.
So these canoes are still in operation. Some atolls still use them for everyday life. So people go fishing, food gathering on other islands, traveling around, shipping cargo. So they are used like trucks in the lagoon. This is for some atolls, not for all. This is still part of everyday life. And Elsen has already introduced it. WAM is a very, very big factor in that. Next slide, please.
Siguiente.
So One Island and Marshall is a key player when it comes to the revival of these canoes, and to sailing them, to the teaching, the documentation. Next slide, please.
Siguiente.
Here we see what Elsen has been explaining to us. They bring in young kids, young students. I think this is a class of 2018. And yeah, teach them life skills, math, English, carpeting skills, canoe sailing, island survival skills, traditional, all the traditional stuff you need to know, but also the modern stuff, and prepare them for a modern life, and especially for a successful life and a happy life. And by doing this, they use the canoe, the traditional element of the canoe, which is very, very deeply rooted in the culture and society, to as a tool for these young people, as a tool and as a guide through their life. Next slide, please.
Siguiente.
Or maybe I give you first opportunity for translation. Sorry.
Sure, thank you. Entonces aquí lo que nos está contando Henrik tiene que ver entonces precisamente con, bueno, como veníamos diciendo, al ser islas que dependen de, o que son muy vulnerables al cambio climático, cada emisión que de alguna manera pone cada vez más a estas islas en un riesgo de desaparecer. Henrik en realidad habla de una palabra que me parece muy interesante, que es el genocidio climático, y es que realmente pues es una amenaza, porque además pues estas personas no tienen a dónde ir, ¿cierto? Son, digamos que si el mar cubre estos espacios terrestres donde la gente habita, pues no hay a dónde ir. Es en ese sentido, por eso pues también ha habido como este compromiso y de parte del mismo gobierno de las Marshall Islands por reducir emisiones. Y por supuesto, digamos, ahora pues hay más países que están, digamos, pensando el tema de la reducción de emisiones en relación con el transporte marítimo. Esto en parte también porque, por supuesto, la industria del transporte marítimo en las Marshall Islands es muy grande, ¿cierto? Obviamente, además, siendo un país completamente oceánico, por lo cual, pues de alguna manera, por eso ellos han sido líderes en esta cuestión. Ahora, de alguna manera, digamos que lograr una industria, un transporte marítimo sostenible, digamos, es clave, más si tenemos en cuenta pues que hay una gran dependencia del transporte marítimo, ¿cierto? Es de alguna manera las embarcaciones siguen siendo claves para muchas cosas, ¿cierto? Tienen muchísimos usos de transporte para conseguir la alimentación, ¿cierto? Para digamos que siguen siendo parte de la vida cotidiana de las personas. Y bueno, ahí de hecho veíamos estas fotografías que también ilustran un poco lo que nos decía nuestro anterior invitado, de las canoas, ¿cierto? De las canoas de las Islas Marshall, que como vieron ustedes en estas fotografías, pues en realidad son embarcaciones bastante grandes, muy eficientes, ¿cierto? La primera foto es una foto de 1880, o sea, son las canoas antiguas, que de alguna manera fueron las que permitieron el poblamiento de toda esta región, que como vimos fue hace aproximadamente 2000 años, y que permitieron que la gente se moviera de isla en isla buscando pues tierra para asentarse. Y después de eso, pues vimos estas otras fotografías que ilustran también este proceso de aprendizaje, ¿cierto?, hacia las nuevas generaciones, de cómo se ha buscado recuperar el conocimiento para que las nuevas generaciones pues sepan sobre esto, ¿cierto? Pero además porque de alguna manera lo que se busca es como un diálogo entre lo tradicional y lo contemporáneo, ¿cierto? De alguna manera también la adquisición de estos conocimientos y estas prácticas por parte de las personas, de los jóvenes, pues son habilidades que son muy útiles para otros contextos también. You can go ahead, Henrik.
Thank you very much. So what we see here on this slide is traditional canoe. That's what we're talking about. And what you can see here is for example, what Elson told us, the asymmetric hull shape. So for me as an engineer, this canoe is super impressive. This is, a technological marvel, I would say. Even for today, the speeds are higher than almost any other boats in that size that, for example, in Europe or in the US, in the Western world that we sail. So this is just a crazy sailing machine, and those guys have come up with it 2,000 years ago. What you clearly see here is on the right side the asymmetric hull shape. It has one side is flat, the other side is round. Then you have this design with one main hull and one outrigger as a balancer. This is actually what modern racing monohulls use. They have a huge lead under the ship, and they can swing it around to counter the momentum of the sail. And it's basically the same thing. And also the shock absorbing system. You can see that some beams are going down, other going straight. These hulls can actually move like independently of each other in the waves and make the canoe way more efficient. So after telling you all this, and also I think you can tell I'm really fascinated about these things. You may ask, why does WAM need help from a German engineer when they are capable to make these awesome canoes? Next slide, please.
Siguiente.
So why do we need a collaboration of Western science and indigenous knowledge in this case? And next slide, please.
Siguiente.
There's a problem with canoe building right now, or throughout the 20th century, because Essen has already told us a little bit about the background of that. Many knowledge has been lost through different reasons, just because it wasn't modern anymore and the American lifestyle was more appealing, partly through Japanese occupation, World War II, colonization of the Germans. There are multiple reasons, but fact is that that canoe building through the 20th century has been on decline until WAM came into being and started documenting it and started to create an interest for young people in it. Make it interesting again, make it attractive again, bring it back to life, you can say. And the interesting thing is, despite being in decline for years, canoes were at the same time very much needed for transportation because, I don't know, what is the liter of gasoline at your place in Colombia right now?
What's the liter from gasoline? Like who sells?
Yeah, how much is it roundabout?
Oh, it's around. Well, the dollar is very high right now, so it's around $3.
$3.
Yeah.
Wow.
But because our money is like very low.
Oh, okay. You have to import it. Okay, then it's maybe a bad example. But the Marshall Islands.
It's very expensive for us. It is.
Yeah, in the Marshall Islands, on the outer islands, you would pay. I think you would pay at least 3 to 4, so kind of like the same. But you have to keep in mind those people on the outer islands, they don't make much money. They make maybe $1 or $2 a day. So when they don't have a canoe, when they only have a motorboat, it's going to be very difficult and to sustain the lifestyle. And these canoes are really needed for fishing, for example, because that's the only food resource. And when you rely on gasoline and there is no gasoline or you can't pay for it, there is no food for your family on the table. And yeah, that's a big problem. And now you could say, why don't you just build more of these canoes? So you obviously some people have the skills. One can do it. Why don't they make a canoe for everybody? Would be nice if we could do that, but there's another problem. Please go one slide ahead.
Siguiente.
So Alison has mentioned that too. The traditional wood used for these canoes is breadfruit, and the breadfruit tree is also a food source. Did you got breadfruit trees in Colombia?
We
Yes,
have
you
in,
did.
in San Andres. They were brought from the Polynesia by the British.
Ah, so you know what I'm talking about when we talk about breadfruit. Awesome.
Yeah.
So these trees were mainly used for the hulls of the canoes, because this is the only tree that grows on the island which is kind of large enough and has a wood which is not super heavy, but it's kind of, yeah, it works best for these canoes. So the problem is, because it makes food, people don't really want to cut down breadfruit trees because they're already scarce on the island. And another problem is sea level rising, because these breadfruit trees, they don't like salty water. At least most varieties doesn't like it. And when the sea level rises, it pushes the freshwater lands out of the island, and at least it gets smaller. And when you get over flooding, there is salt water getting into the soil. And these breadfruit trees, they usually grow in the center of the island, not on the outside, and go with their roots right into this fresh water. And if they don't get that fresh water anymore, they don't grow that well. So for the long term, we'll face a big problem with sourcing probable lumber to make canoes. So we had to come up with another plan to use other materials for canoe building. Next slide, please.
Siguiente.
And WAM, or the One Island Cane, has kind of pioneered that because it was the first thing they did. They made a traditional canoe from plywood. But when you do that, when you step from lumber, from breadfruit lumber to plywood, that's a huge change, and it does need very different skills, because on the first hand you have a log. It's a three-dimensional piece of wood that you can work with, that you can carve. On the other hand, you have an almost two-dimensional sheet of plywood. So it requires a whole different skill, different tools, different methods. And we have developed together at WAM a technology that allows us to make these canoes in a kind of traditional fashion, keeping some of the measurement techniques, some of the basic design ideas, or most of the basic design ideas, while switching the material to plywood. Next slide, please.
Siguiente.
So done is modifying the stitch and glue technology. That's something that's already there since I think since the 70s, and adapted that for the needs we have here in the Marshall Islands. Next slide, please.
Siguiente.
So when you start making a canoe, that starts with measuring it. That is, in our case, for our prototype designs, that can be done. It's not necessary to do it that way, but it can be done without any units. So we don't have a confusion with inch or meter or centimeter. It's just everything is built in relation to each other. And by doing that, there's even no blueprint required. So, for example, for the WAM catamaran, one of the prototypes I will talk about later, you only need to memorize 7 ratios. That can be easily done by a canoe builder. And when you memorize these 7 ratios and do it 1 or 2 times, then you can repeat it without the need for blueprint. So there's no blueprint you can use, you can lose. There's no blueprint that can get wet in the workshop or rot away, whatever. It can be easily memorized. And by this technique, the plywood panels are cut and cut out. Next slide, please.
Siguiente.
After that, they are glued together to the hull shape. And next step.
Siguiente.
Special thing about this construction, that's why it's called stitch and glue, is that the individual plywood panels are stitched together with copper wire. And this entire construction doesn't require framing. So you get a 3-dimensional hull without making a frame first. The hull is actually there at the first place, and then you insert the frames. That saves lots of work. And next slide, please.
Siguiente.
When we look in the past again, this photograph from 1880. You can see along the hull, there's one guy in a white suit is sitting on the canoe. And under him, you can see a line with lots of little dots along it. And these canoes were actually stitched together. These canoes were made from individual planks that were stitched with coconut fiber. So this stitch and glue is actually not very new for the Marshall Islands. We're just substituting the traditional materials with copper wire, with plywood, with epoxy glue, and have a modernized version of this traditional technique. Maybe I give you a short opportunity to translate.
Ok, perfect. Bueno, básicamente nos estaba contando sobre los diseños muy particulares. Enrique es un arquitecto naval y bueno, dice que precisamente la primera diapositiva que estaba al inicio, después de mi última traducción, muestra precisamente una de estas formas particulares. Él dice que es una maravilla tecnológica que fue además diseñada hace miles de años, que es supremamente rápida, que incluso hoy son diseños que son supremamente veloces, mucho más que los diseños europeos, por ejemplo. Y digamos de ahí pasa a contarnos, digamos, sobre esta situación de cómo gran parte del conocimiento local y tradicional se ha perdido, lo cual pues es un gran reto para toda la cuestión de la salvaguarda de este conocimiento. Pero sin embargo señala que es curioso que a pesar, digamos, del declinio de este conocimiento, las canoas siguen siendo claves para pescar y para transportar en las Marshall Islands. Y además son muy importantes y se vuelven muy importantes al pensar precisamente también la cuestión de los precios de la gasolina, que como ya lo había mencionado nuestro invitado previamente, pues son tremendamente altos, por lo cual se vuelve casi prohibitivo para mucha gente poder acceder a esto. Pero también nos cuenta de otra cuestión, y este es un tema muy bien interesante, creo que para nosotros en San Andrés, y es que la mayor parte de estas canoas eran originalmente fabricadas en madera de breadfruit, sin embargo, o de pan de fruta pan, que es un árbol que hay mucho en el archipiélago, particularmente en San Andrés. Sin embargo, estos árboles se han vuelto muy escasos, ¿cierto? Ya no se consiguen como antes, lo cual hace más difícil todavía construir embarcaciones. Entre otras cosas porque son comida, ¿cierto? Son árboles que producen comida y pues la gente no quiere, en la medida en que son muy escasos, la gente no quiere cortarlos, obviamente, pero además de eso, porque a medida que sube el nivel del mar y se saliniza el suelo, teniendo en cuenta que son estas islas tan bajitas, ¿cierto? Y eso produce que los árboles también hayan muerto, se vayan muriendo. Entonces eso pues es una amenaza también a toda esta cuestión. lo cual, entre otras cosas, pues ha generado la necesidad de cambiar materiales, de readaptar los materiales y las herramientas, de alguna manera manteniendo aquello del conocimiento tradicional que es posible y utilizando pues otros materiales que permitan de alguna manera darle continuidad. Y pues lo que veíamos al final son diferentes ejemplos de formas particulares cómo se construye. Ahí veíamos, por ejemplo, de estas digamos, piezas que son tejidas, ¿cierto? Ahí lo veíamos en las diapositivas, las formas propias de hacer medidas, ¿cierto? Que no son las mismas que se utilizan en Occidente, y otros ejemplos de las maneras particulares, cómo se construye, pero también cómo se está readaptando ese conocimiento. You can go ahead, Henrik.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we have the hull panels lashed together and they're stitched. So we have a right panel and a left panel that are going to be the side of the canoe hull. And what happens next is these panels, this stitched sandwich of panels, is placed upright in cradles. Next slide, please. When it's sitting in there. Okay, one other slide, please.
Siguiente.
Now it's sitting in there. And what happens then is that the two-dimensional hull is turned into something three-dimensional by just pulling it apart, by spreading it apart and inserting a bulkhead. So it's actually like a little bit like making like folding a ship from paper. So you start with a flat material, you fold it a couple of times, in this case we stitch it together, and then you spread it apart and suddenly you have a boat. This is how it works. So it saves weeks of very intense labor and building a frame, placing everything, measuring everything in relation to each other, and we can skip all that stuff. We can just go ahead making the hull, putting in some stiffeners, and that's it. Next slide, please.
Siguiente.
So when the bulkheads are inserted, everything is fixed in place by epoxy fillets. And this is basically a bed of thickened epoxy that gets applied on each seam. Wherever individual plywood panels meet each other, we will make a bed of, like a round bed of thickened epoxy. Usually you would use epoxy thickener for that, but we had to adapt it a little bit for the Marshall Islands because there is no epoxy thickener on the island. So what we have been using is actually baking flour, like regular flour, and that works perfectly well. It's a little bit heavier, but it's a very nice adaptation for this application. Okay, next slide, please.
Siguiente.
Here you can see the finished canoe. After everything gets glued together, it just needs to make an outrigger, some beams, sails and spars, give them a paint job, and lash it all together. So all these canoes are lashed together with rope. There's no screws, no metal, no bolts in it. It's only wood, epoxy, glass fiber, and lashing rope. There is no metal in this entire boat. And this makes it strong, this makes it rot resistant, easy to make, easy to maintain, and also flexible, because this entire construction is adapting to the shape of the waves. It's not fighting the waves, it's not pounding into them, it's gently adapting to the movement and absorbing all the stress. That makes it live longer and gives you a more comfortable ride. Okay, next slide, please.
Siguiente.
So starting at this very traditional design, this very traditional canoe design that has been around for like a couple of thousand years, we thought about how can we go the next step, because modern life is different to the life it was like 100 years ago or 200 years ago. So we kind of have to address the modern needs. And what we did was designing some prototypes to just to try things out and see what works best, and designed them based on these traditional canoes. So we have made two different designs You can see them on the next slide. Next slide, please.
Siguiente.
One of them is a catamaran that you can see on the right side. Catamaran is with two hulls, two similar hulls. And the other one is a Prova Design, which is more similar to the traditional canoes. It has one large main hull and another smaller windward hull. And we've built a couple of them, or one have built a couple of them right now, and trialed them intensively on the lagoons. Next slide, please.
Siguiente.
So here we have the first one, the catamaran, the warm catamaran in detail. It is a simple construction. It's super, super simple. It can be made in 3 weeks by skilled people, the entire thing. It uses the same sail as traditional canoes. And the special thing is it has dry cargo compartments. So in each hull, you can, how many were it? 6 bags of copra. Doesn't matter. You can store lots of stuff in there that you don't want to get wet. And that's a big improvement over traditional canoes, because on these canoes, the hull is too slim. You can't really put things inside, at least not in the smaller ones. So you always have to carry all cargo on top of them. And when it gets rainy, everything's wet. When you have a rough ride, you get lots of spray, everything's wet. With this warm catamaran, you can easily put everything inside. And on top, it is very, very simple to operate. So actually, Sue can tell you, she's been sailing it alone. I haven't been doing anything. She has been starting it, sailing around, tacking it, and bringing it back to the anchor ground, dropping the anchor, worked perfectly fine. So it's very, very simple and safe. And yeah, it's kind of the cargo truck of the lagoon right now. And actually, you can find a manual. We have published a manual of how to make this one. So it's easy to follow, step-by-step manual. If you want to build one, you can download it. And within 3 weeks, when you follow those steps, you have one of these catamarans.
Okay.
So next slide, please.
Siguiente.
So this one is the Prova Design. It was developed in a collaboration with Rob Denny from Harry Prova, Australian boat designer. This one is specialized on fishing. So the nice thing is you have a huge space on in between the hulls, and there is no sail that swings over it, because the sail is only on the leeward hull and it's only swinging on the water, over the water side where nobody is. So you have lots of space to handle the fishing equipment, to land in the catch, and it's very shallow draft too. It has a built-in fish hold with little holes on the bottom where fresh water can get in to keep the fish fresh, in the case there is no ice available. And this particular one here in the picture actually has a small, or it has a little cabin on the windward and smaller windward hull where you could put in a kitchen or something like that to prepare the fish that you just caught. This is basically a sustainable fish factory for the local needs. This is something that could feed a small community. Okay, next slide, please.
Siguiente.
So what you see here is actually one of the prototypes in use. This is on Likiep. Janina made us this full picture. Those guys are actually using it almost every day, as far as I know. And yeah, for transportation, just for traveling around, for hauling in food, for fishing, for all kinds of different activities. And actually it has already been used as an ambulance to bring someone sick to the main village. Next slide, please.
Siguiente.
And this warm catamaran is actually capable of replacing outboard-powered motorboats on these outer islands. So it's a real alternative that we can offer with these prototype designs. Okay, maybe I give you some chance to translate, otherwise it gets too much.
Sí, bueno, nos estaba contando, seguía contando Henrik sobre las diferentes formas de construir nos mostró algunos ejemplos de cómo se dobla la madera para construir los barcos, ¿no? Algo que realmente ya me llama mucho la atención. Igualmente, bueno, cómo se pegan los pedazos. Y es muy importante señalar entonces cómo estas embarcaciones tradicionales no tienen tornillos, no tienen partes metálicas, ¿cierto? Lo cual las hace más fáciles de mantener, más fáciles de fabricar, más fáciles de mantener, y además son unas embarcaciones que se adaptan muy bien al oleaje, lo cual pues las hace muy eficientes. Entonces un poco lo que ellos han venido haciendo ahora en el marco también de este proyecto es diseñar nuevos prototipos basados en la navegación tradicional, ¿cierto? En los modelos tradicionales, pero obviamente pues con innovaciones que buscan pues hacer más fácil tanto los procesos constructivos como la vida de la gente. Entonces nos mostraba básicamente dos modelos de construcción muy simples, ¿cierto? Modelos que son fáciles de hacer y que, bueno, para el que sabe, por supuesto, y el primero es uno que está como enfocado para carga, ¿cierto? Estos catamaranes que tienen compartimientos para carga, y el segundo modelo que tiene, pues, tiene un énfasis más hacia la pesca, pero pues en realidad también puede tener otros usos, ¿cierto? Ahí nos mostraban algunos ejemplos con las fotografías, con este mar espectacular que se parece al nuestro, donde pues estaban los modelos que ya están en uso. Okay.
Thank you very much. So next slide, please. One important thing to note is that WAM is not actually just dumping these prototypes or these canoes onto other islands, onto atolls. There is a very sophisticated training curriculum behind it. So what actually happens is that WAM is hosting training workshops. They usually take for a couple of months, and the outer island communities who wish to participate in these workshops, they send in people. Either they are already canoe builders, or they have a maritime background, or sometimes they even have no maritime background but are very willing to learn. And those guys, they come to WAM and they learn how to make these canoes. So first they build one canoe together, one of these prototypes, to learn the basic technique. For example, they make together a catamaran or a proa. And after that, they build their own small traditional outrigger canoe. And this canoe they will take home and bring to their home community. And they not only learn the skill, but they also learn how to teach the skill. So when they're back on their home island, they can actually start teaching other people and spread the knowledge, how to use alternative materials. Okay, next slide, please.
Siguiente.
The curriculum of these training workshops is organized around canoe design. So how to design a canoe, what are important features, how does it work, how does a good canoe work, how has a canoe to be shaped like, for example, all those things. Then we have tools, of course. We have the new materials, we have the new building techniques. Also a very important thing is sailing, and of course safety training, because when you send people on the water, you also want to keep them safe. So sailing and safety very closely related to each other is also a big and important part of it. Next slide, please.
Siguiente.
So what you can see here is how one of these workshops looks like. It's almost like a little canoe factory. So we have here 4 canoes getting built simultaneously right next to each other. I think there's hardly any place in the world where you can find something like that. So many traditional boats built at the same time at the same place. And those canoes are all in the outer islands right now, and hopefully are all being used to replace a motorboat. Next slide, please.
Siguiente.
So in the end, to come to a conclusion, what we try to achieve with this program is, first of all, the availability of transportation for the local communities, and of course the independency of fossil fuel, because independency of fossil fuel means there is less fuel burned and there are less emissions, and therefore we can fight climate change, or at least we can do our small contribution to the global effort to fight climate change. And a nice side effect of all these efforts is that the food security is improved of these little islands, because the only resource, there are hardly any food resources on land aside of these breadfruit trees, some taro maybe. It's very difficult to grow stuff there. So the main food resource is the ocean, and with a canoe you can access this food resource. Because what happens right now on many atolls is the people don't have boats to access the water. They can hardly go for fishing. Well, they can fish from the shore, but that's not very effective. What happens most of the time is that mainly Chinese fishing boats cruise through the Marshallese waters, catch a lot of tuna, send this tuna to China, put it in tin cans, ship it back, and sell it to the Marshallese people. And these islands are surrounded by lots of seafood, lots of healthy seafood. And these canoes actually, they allow it for the local people to access them. And in addition, there's also lots of pride and self-esteem associated to these canoes, because this is a traditional canoe. This is their own thing. This is not something that is coming from abroad. This is not something that was given to them. It's something from the people for the people. And yeah, it's a very, very important meaning for the Marshallese culture. Next slide, please.
Siguiente.
Yeah, what do we hope to do in the future? One outlook is maybe having a second phase of training workshops to develop larger canoes. Because right now, everything that has built so far is below 30 feet with this new technique. 30 feet in length, that's about 9 to 10 meters. So for the inside lagoon transportation, or this traditional part of the program, we aim to make larger canoes which are also capable of short offshore sailing. So yeah, we're just looking forward to extend this entire thing. In addition, there will be the offshore sailing and training ship that Sue has already been introducing, and I think we'll watch a video after my presentation about it. That has very high potential for a collaboration, because this ship is meant for training, and training is also what WAM is doing. So there's a big opportunity for collaboration. And another thing is basically what we're doing right now is upscaling to other countries and regions. So telling about the experiences we had in the Marshalls, because we're doing this for 5 years now, and we've gained lots of experience, lots of knowledge, and we have published lots of stuff. For example, the construction manuals, they're free to use, and it would be awesome if other places could learn from these experiences. So if you have any questions, please ask my colleagues, because I'm a bit running out of time, so I will have to leave right after my presentation. But please don't be shy, just reach out. We're all very, very happy to share stuff and to collaborate.
Thank you,
So,
Henrik.
thank you.
It was very, very nice. I'm going to finish the translation. So, básicamente lo que nos cuenta es cómo desde Guam, en el marco de esos proyectos, se han venido haciendo talleres de entrenamiento para gente tanto en Guam como gente que viene de otras islas, para aprender cómo construir, digamos, ahí nos mostró el currículo, aprender el diseño, las herramientas, los materiales, por supuesto la navegación y también cuestiones de seguridad marítima. Pues de alguna manera pues lo que nos muestra es, bueno, cuáles son los beneficios para las comunidades que tienen que ver con la posibilidad de tener pues mayor acceso al transporte, una independencia de los combustibles fósiles, una cuestión de seguridad alimentaria que es clave porque, como nos decía, pues son islas en donde hay muy pocos recursos alimentarios terrestres, por lo cual la mayor parte de la comida viene del mar. Y finalmente una cuestión de orgullo y de identidad cultural, porque se trata al final de cuentas de un conocimiento propio, de algo que ha venido de la misma gente para pues la misma gente de allí. Entonces, ya para cerrar, nos cuenta cómo en estos momentos pues están en qué es lo que ven hacia el futuro, cuáles son las expectativas, ¿cierto? Por una parte, una segunda fase de talleres para transmitir estos conocimientos, continuar con la cuestión de la construcción de un barco de carga mayor, ¿cierto? Que sirva además también para entrenar personas y finalmente la idea también de poder llevar esta experiencia y estos conocimientos a otros países y otras regiones. Y con eso pues él termina su presentación, dice que si hay preguntas, él tiene que irse, pero sus colegas pueden responder. So thank you very much, Henrik, for the presentation. We do have a question in our chat. So I don't know if I can make it, and then maybe we can see the video that Suellen has. It's very short. The question is, what speed do these the three-sail ship can reach? What speed it can reach? How long are the trips between the atolls? What are the distance that they cover? And this like more or less like that. So I don't know if you would like to answer before you leave.
I can quickly answer that before I leave. So the speed depends very much on the wind, obviously, because it's a sailing ship. All the sailing ships, they have no motorization. Well, we have equipped one with an electric engine, but that was an experiment. Like the regular ones have no propulsion aside of the wind. And the warm catamaran, for example, we have been reaching 10 knots with that one in a good breeze from behind. I would say an average, maybe, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 knots, no idea. Regular trips, for example, in Madero, are from east to west about 20 nautical miles, from north to south, another way around about, yeah, how much is it? Maybe 10 nautical miles. So these are the distances. The traditional canoes are made for speed, so they are really, really fast. One has built a racing canoe in 1992 that was sailing 22 knots in 20 knots of wind. So it was actually capable of sailing faster than the wind. So these canoes, these traditional ones, are really racing machines. What we are mainly doing for cargo transport and for fishing is not meant to be super, super fast, because you don't take your truck on a race course usually. You want to have your truck to move stuff around, and that's what these canoes are made for, the prototypes, sorry.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Maybe one addition to that, we will, in the future, we will also publish measurements, performance measurements of these canoes. So you can find polar diagrams and regular, like, example trips. You know what I mean? We will make some test sails that are usually sailed for fishing or for cargo transportation, and measure how long it takes under certain wind conditions and all that kind of stuff. You can already find a glimpse of that in the manual. I think on one of the first pages is also a polar diagram for the warm catamaran.
Okay.
When you really want to have a look into the numbers.
Thank you. Básicamente la pregunta es sobre la velocidad y las distancias que recorren. En cuanto by Henrik, la velocidad que recorren, y bueno, la respuesta es que el barco grande puede tener entre 5 y 7 nudos de distancia. Las distancias que se recorren en los atolones son más o menos entre 10 y 20 millas náuticas. Sin embargo, pues él nos cuenta que las canoas más rápidas pues son muy rápidas en realidad. Hay canoas que alcanzan hasta 22 nudos de distancia, de 22 nudos de velocidad en un viento de 22 nudos, lo cual es básicamente una canoa que es casi que más rápida que el mismo viento. Sin embargo, como él menciona, pues no se necesitan canoas tan rápidas para pescar, ¿cierto? Pues de hecho estaba hablando más como de canoas para hacer carreras propiamente dichas. Y finalmente cierra diciendo que de hecho van a publicar una información, me imagino que en su página, sobre medidas del performance de las canoas, precisamente porque están haciendo ese tipo de mediciones. So I don't know if you want to, we can pass the video. Do you think? Yeah, no, we are going to pass it, don't worry. So we will pass it. Carlos, ¿podemos poner el video, por favor? Vamos a presentar el video sobre esta iniciativa.
Since January 2021, the sailing cargo ship Kwai is owned by the Republic of the Marshall Islands. In the Marshalls, more than 1,000 islands are scattered over a surface area of a size comparable to Mexico. Maritime transport is essential for economic activity, connectivity, and resilience in the ocean nation. Also, it is a significant factor for delivering education, health, environmental, and economic development, including response to climate change impacts. Still, RMI is almost entirely dependent on imported fossil fuels, which places a heavy burden on national and household budgets. Shifting from the use of fossil fuel propulsion to renewable energy sources helps in reducing the cost of providing regular and reliable transfer services to outer island communities, thereby supporting more inclusive and sustainable economic growth for the country. With the German-funded bilateral project between the Ministry of Transportation, Communication, and Information Technologies in the Marshall Islands and Deutsche Gesellschaft für internationale Zusammenarbeit (GIZ) are jointly implementing a project on transitioning to low-carbon sea transport, funded by the German Ministry of Environment, Nature Conservation, and Nuclear Safety. The implementing partner, the Marshall Islands Shipping Corporation, agreed on a 4-month charter of the SV Kwai between September and December 2020 to test their capacity in national waters. The Kwai is a seaworthy sailing vessel, equipped with engine assistance for maneuvering during windless and calm conditions. The Marshallese government agreed on the purchase of the Kwai in late December 2020. Overall, the proposed scenario of the purchase intended to maximize RMI's chances of a real transition towards low-carbon sea transport, with a focus on skills development and scalability and replicability of the developed technologies and newly gained capabilities. As clearly said in the Teleteleo strategy of the Republic of the Marshall Islands, the RMI is targeting net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. In the transport sector, land, aviation, and sea transport, a 16% reduction of the greenhouse gas carbon dioxide by the year 2025, and of 27% by the year 2030 is aimed. Particularly in the sea transport area, it has been agreed on a 40% reduction by 2030 and full decarbonization by the year 2050, as set out in the UNFCCC and DC commitments. The German-funded project Low Carbon Sea Transport aims at reducing CO2 emissions of domestic sea transport in the Marshall Islands to help achieving RMI's NDC objectives. For now, SV Kwai will make her round trips to all parts of the Marshall Islands. Thousands of tons of materials will be sailed nearly emission-free by crew from the Marshall Islands Shipping Corporation. The impact on shipping already became apparent. As one of the busiest vessels hauling copra to Medjugorje and taking passengers and cargo to the outer islands, she has proven the advantages of wind-propelled ships. And the loan that was used to finance the purchase was already paid off. Now SV Kwai is making profits for the Marshall Islands Shipping Corporation. Respectable scene, SV Kwai jointly with the German-funded and more modern sailing cargo freighter will furthermore provide a much-needed platform for particular maritime training. The new build sailing ship includes special areas designated for teaching and training. SV Kwai for now already allows Marshallese seamen to learn the basics of sailing a 120 feet ship by the means of wind energy. The initiative is provided a great example that low carbon sea transportation is feasible and beneficial, which is much needed to mitigate climate change. As part of the ambitious project, a sailing cargo vessel for inter-atoll sea transport in RMI has to be designed, built, tested, and assessed in the domestic waters of Marshall Islands. At a later stage of the project, a mature concept for low-carbon shipping technologies will be disseminated through the region.
Tu micrófono.
Y aquí hemos entonces visto este video que complementa de manera muy buena la información que nos han compartido Suelin, Henrik, Rafael y el equipo de Low Carbon Transport Initiative. So we're finishing our activity, Suelin and team. But before we leave, I would like to ask you a question. And it's in relation to canoe races because, like Henrik mentioned something about it. So, is there a tradition of canoe races in the Marshall Islands?
I believe that the question, the right person to answer is Elson. So, Elson, if you could go ahead and answer, Kumar.
Yes, Komal, Suelen, and Komal for the question. Yes, canoe race is one of the reasons behind the enthusiasm of the community with the revival of the canoes. Our chiefs and our group got together with the leaders of each of the outer islands to have canoes built in those islands to come into Medjugorje, the capital city, to do national canoe races. From there, it started, it kind of expanded. So almost every big event in Medjugorje, there is a canoe race. And that's one of the attractive ways to get all the young people to be part of this uh, uh, canoeing culture, the revival of the canoeing culture. Not only that, but it just gives the canoe builders more opportunities to learn and relearn and come up with new designs within the and reshaping the canoes so they can be, of course, the canoes are already fast, but they can be faster than the next canoe. So that's one of the main reason why the canoe is it's been revived and be strong. And of course, we put that on all the social medias and all the uh, uh, regional news. So all the young people that are part of it, they become role models to all the young people around the Marshall Islands and outside the Marshalls. And there's actually been talk to have canoe races, traditional canoe races, as part of our regional Olympic Games. So yes, canoe races is very strong and is a very important part of this program to educate the young people in school and outside the school and bring in enthusiasts to the people, to the young people, and also to everybody, the canoe builders and the trainees, because it just creates self-esteem and cultural feeling, good cultural feeling toward this canoeing culture.
Thank you. Thank you
That's
very
a
much.
kind of longer part of the answer.
No, it's great. I just wanted to tell you that I'm really glad to hear about what you're saying because actually, although we are very distant and we are culturally very different, we also have like a tradition that is it was like European and African descent tradition where we are here in the Caribbean in Colombia. And you have canoe, well, you did have canoe races, or canoes are totally different, smaller. And then you have like these other boats that are cat boats. If you see my screen, that is a little bit behind, it's what's the festival. Then you have like this small models that people race with, and then you have like bigger boats that people also race that they are locally built. So it's very, very interesting to hear about your history and your culture. Nos cuenta entonces Mr. Alson que en efecto pues, las canoas, las carreras de estas canoas tan especiales que hemos visto pues han sido muy importantes en la historia de las Marshall Islands y de hecho son hoy en día pues una de las razones por las cuales muchos de los jefes tribales, ¿cierto? Se sienten muy emocionados y muy comprometidos con revivir estas tradiciones, estos conocimientos, estas prácticas, porque pues es una actividad que congrega a mucha gente, que hace que la gente se sienta contenta y que además hoy en día también pues es muy llamativa para la gente joven, que ellos pues buscan que se vinculen a estas manifestaciones y que también las valoren. De manera que creo que esto es muy bonito para cerrar porque de alguna manera también conecta con lo que tenemos en nuestro lado del mundo, que también por supuesto está en riesgo, como lo están, digamos, los conocimientos locales y tradicionales en muchos lugares, o en casi todo el mundo. Sin embargo, pues yo creo que iniciativas como las que ellos nos cuentan son formas muy importantes de vincular el conocimiento local y de darle un valor y de resignificarlo en un mundo que por supuesto ha cambiado y seguirá cambiando. So, Suelin and Mr. Alson, there's a last question and then we can finish because it's like I know we're late. Is like how you are, like what strategies are you using to show to the world like this initiative? Because well, Henrik was saying about like there is an interest like to like upgrade, like to carry to other regions, to other countries, but like if you are already doing like this kind of exchanges, well, this is one, of course, and we're very glad to hear from you. But like if you have other links or proposals to exchange, how do you think that could be?
Yes, so we mostly use social media or websites, and like of course we'll send you the the link. But because of the, I mean, the result is that our government is involved with canoes because they're supporting a lot of the canoe races. And I'd like to also add that canoe races is not just, we don't just have the canoe races, but we have canoe model races. So all the young people, even the kids, are involved with the canoe model races, and the best of the best would transfer to the big canoe races. And of course, like I said, our government is involved with a lot of the supports, and every time that they go to the global stage and talk about climate change, they also bring in the canoes. And this has become a regional and international topic everywhere. Is our utilizing our traditional knowledge and skills to make sure that we keep the fossil fuel on the ground, and also to fight, and of course, as a way of fighting climate change.
Okay, thank you. Bueno, y entonces aquí también nos cuenta cómo existen también carreras de modelos de canoas, ¿cierto? Que también se parecen a esto que nosotros tenemos aquí. De hecho, yo estaba viendo una de las fotos en donde había una pintura de niños con los pequeños modelos de canoas. Y bueno, de hecho, pues sí hay un interés del gobierno de las Islas Marshall también por apoyar estos procesos y bueno, porque se vean en otros lugares del mundo. So, well, Suelin and Mr. Alston, I really, really thank you for this space, for this opportunity to exchange, and now about you. Well, I hope that we can continue in contact. It would be very nice to send somebody from here for a workshop there. It's a long trip, but would be lovely. I think would be a very nice cultural exchange. So I hope we can keep in contact, and well, thank you very much. So we're finishing now our presentation. Muchísimas gracias a todos los que nos acompañaron en este espacio. There are people that is like congratulating you on the chats. They were like saying that it's very impressive what you have shown. Muchísimas gracias por acompañarnos. Vamos a terminar entonces nuestra presentación y dentro de un rato también tendremos la presentación de la obra de teatro El Otro Mar, que es una obra de teatro que fue realizada en el marco de un proyecto del Ministerio de Ciencia en Colombia sobre apropiación social del conocimiento a través del arte, y es una obra de teatro que habla sobre los saberes patrimoniales del Caribe y el Pacífico colombianos en torno al mar. Así que los esperamos en nuestras siguientes actividades. Mañana tenemos las dos últimas actividades virtuales y con eso terminamos nuestra programación virtual, pero seguimos con programación presencial. Mañana en la tarde en la Universidad Nacional de Colombia, sede Caribe, en San Andrés, tendremos una presentación sobre resiliencia cultural en el marco de desastres con las experiencias de Barbuda y de la isla de Muisne en Ecuador. Y el miércoles a las 2 de la tarde en el Centro Cultural del Banco de la República, en el centro en San Andrés, también tendremos un diálogo de saberes con pescadores de diferentes lugares del país, incluyendo por una parte pescadores de Providencia, pero también algunos invitados del Caribe continental y del Pacífico. Así que están todos muy invitados. Thank you very much again, and have a good night. Bye.
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 Sue, don't go, please. Wait a second.